Hello, Robert McNeilly here. I just wanted to say some things about what we can do to help relieve people's pain uh, because a lot of people are wary of even attempting this because there's something about pain which is painful for us or frightening to us to deal with. And we know if we've had pain ourselves or if we've worked with people with pain, it's very distressing, very debilitating, and causes a lot of anguish. And very often, the best that seems to be offered goes under the name of pain management. And I want to explore some possible ways that we can do something more than that, something better than that. We actually don't know what is possible for us humans. We know what we can do, but what we can't do is a grey area. But one of the things that I found helpful in my own work and in helping others to work in this area is to recognise that there are two components of pain. One is the sensations and the other is the suffering. We can have sensations which are very strong and very disturbing, and we don't mind them. They're just there. And there are other situations where the pain is not at all strong, but it's agonising. So often we don't distinguish between the sensations themselves and the suffering that goes with it. And I've also found it helpful to remind myself and others that we're never dealing with pain. We're never treating pain. We're never trying to heal pain. There's always a person, and we know that people are different, and so it's crazy to try and find one method, one approach, one theory, one protocol that's going to be useful for all people in all situations. Instead of that, I'm inviting us to look with some different eyes and different ears, and to begin by listening to each individual person for what's missing for them, for what is it about the pain that is particularly painful to them, limiting to them, troublesome to them. And in listening for what is missing for this person, that gives us a direction, it gives us a guide, it gives us a purpose and a shape to what we can begin to do to help each individual person in this situation. When we do this, it helps to generate a relationship which is genuine, caring, empathic, and when the therapeutic relationship has that basis, that's going to be so much more important than whether we do this, that, or the other technique or the theoretical approach. And also, when someone's had pain for a while and maybe had a number of attempts to have some relief from it, there's bound to be some resignation. And so if we can, in ourselves, be in a mood of expectancy, and if we can invite the client directly or indirectly into a mode of expectancy themselves, so that they can be open to the possibility of something happening that can be at least minimally useful and maybe even curative. We actually don't know until we get into the process and then find out as we're doing that. And as far as the sensations are concerned, it's extraordinary, but sensations can change. We can help someone to help change the intensity of their sensations, or even the location of their sensations. That sounds a bit crazy, but it's the case. Erickson said that you can be sitting in a chair and you don't need to notice the sensations of your feet on the floor, of your bottom on the chair, If you wear glasses, you don't need to notice those sensations, even though all of those sensations are noticeable. So we have had, according to him, and if we look at our experience, it's just common sense, we've had a lifetime of experience of not noticing sensations. And also, um, uh, sensations are not fixed. If a person, if I don't know whether you ever had this experience, but if you sit in a comfortable chair with your feet out in front of you and close your eyes and cross your feet, cross your legs at your ankles, if you leave them still for several minutes, you actually cannot tell whether they're crossed or uncrossed. You can't feel them. The only way you can find out is to move them and shuffle them a little bit. Then you know, oh, they're crossed or they're uncrossed. So sensations have a way of disappearing into the background instead of being in the foreground as part of our everyday life. People who live near airports don't hear the planes. People in busy roads don't hear the traffic. And so these sensations, although they are potentially noticeable, we have ways in our everyday life of not needing to pay attention to them. So knowing this gives us a basis to help someone who has painful sensations to start to have the possibility of giving less attention to them, having them be less noticeable, maybe not noticing them at all. And so this can be a huge relief. I remember a policeman telling me that he had tension headache and they were interfering with his career. And he tried everything to relieve the tension. He'd tried relaxation, he could relax his feet and so on. When he got to his neck, the relaxation stopped. He just couldn't somehow get the relaxation to happen in his head. So we started to play with the idea that the tension in his head was really troublesome, could start to move in his body. Could he move it down to his shoulders? Could he move it down to his arms, to his hands? And over several sessions where we played with this, he learned to get his tension headache down, all the way down into his feet. So then he was able to keep his tension headache, but he had them in his feet, and somehow in his feet they were less troublesome, he didn't be bothered by them, and he could keep his job in the police force with a desk job instead of having to leave it. And if we're using hypnosis in a treatment of pain, and hypnosis is fantastic for this, we can seed this idea by just saying to someone, as you go into trance, you don't need to listen to me. You don't need to pay attention to what I'm saying. You don't need to be aware of other things that are there, outside sounds and so on. So we can start to generate to give an introduction into the experience of not noticing. And a few words about the suffering element. Suffering is different from the sensations. And we suffer a situation when it has some particular meaning to us, where we don't want it, where we don't like it, where it interferes with something that's important to us. And also, the more we resist the pain, the more we try and get rid of it, the more intense it becomes. So sometimes we inadvertently increase our suffering by trying to relieve the pain. And Ian Gawler, a veterinary surgeon from Victoria, Australia, who knew a lot about pain, made a beautiful comment. He said that he'd found it helpful for himself and with others to soften around the pain. And if you notice the experience of, it's again counterintuitive, but if we soften around the pain, that helps to relieve the kind of tensing to try and manage the pain which can intensify it. And softening around the pain helps to relieve the suffering and then even sometimes diminish the sensations. An Australian Olympic marathon runner, Robert De Costello, said famously, where someone asked him, when you're running a marathon and you're halfway through and your body's racked with pain, how do you keep running? And Deke said, a bit of pain never hurt anybody. Now, I've never run a marathon, but there was something about what he said that kind of was tickly, and I think it's so useful. Our language can be so helpful here. People with severe pain, particularly if they've got a life-threatening illness, cancer or something, and they try various treatments for help the pain, and some well-meaning doctors say you have to learn to live with the pain. Now, if you listen to that comment, you have to learn to live with the pain, what's going to happen if someone gets rid of the pain? Exactly. So, in relation to the suffering element of pain, again, working with hypnosis, we can say, there may be some things that I say that you don't really like, but you don't need to be disturbed by that. There may be some sounds outside that could be momentarily distracting, but you don't need to be worried by that. So we can start to see the reduction of the resistance, the reduction of the suffering in relation to just what we're speaking. Just a couple of other thoughts. Sometimes pain can be useful. Well, I mean, actually, probably if we didn't know about pain, didn't have pain, we may not have made it to as far as we've got to in our life already. When something's painful, we learn from that. Pain has a signal value. And so sometimes that's the source of the pain, the signal becomes irrelevant. That's when we can start to play with it, help someone to decrease the intensity, the suffering. But also sometimes pain can be a message. Sometimes if someone's got a really severe pain in their joint and in their hip joint, and they try and ignore it, they might just be making their osteoarthritis worse. Sometimes the pain lets us know, do something about it. This might be a little tangential, but there was a woman who had elbow pain. She wanted to have some relief from her elbow pain. It was called RSI in the old days. And I tried various things to help her, and nothing seemed to make any difference. Finally, almost as an act of desperation, I said, I wonder what that pain might be trying to tell you. What's the message that it might be trying to give to you? And she became very thoughtful. And then after a while she said, I want to quit my job and have a child. It was unexpected. I don't know who was more surprised by that comment, her or me, but the pain was actually useful to her. And once she recognised that, she quit her job, the pain left. We actually don't know. We don't know what is possible with pain, with suffering. We actually don't know. I heard about a young man in New Guinea who had an inflamed knee, and he had conventional treatment and nothing was helping it. So he went back to his village, the village where he came from, and saw the medicine man there. He was away for 2 weeks. When he came back, his knee was completely normal. And when he was asked what happened, he said, the medicine man told me someone had put a curse on my knee. He removed the curse and it healed. Now, we hear that and we think, oh, that's a bit weird. But I can imagine that if we said to that medicine man, we think that the way to treat this man's knee is by giving him anti-inflammatory tablets and pain relievers, he might have thought that we're weird. So I mention this just because there are many different ways of observing, of understanding, and of helping the process of healing, some of which we know about and some of which we're still pretty ignorant about. But if I can remind us all, we actually don't know what's possible. We don't know the limits of possibility. So thank you for listening to these ideas. My invitation is for you to play with them. When someone says that they've got a pain problem, instead of looking up a textbook about pain management, listen to your client. What is it for them? What's missing for them? And what happens when you start to explore with them what it is that they think will be helpful to deal with this? And then play with helping them to reduce the sensations, if that's the issue. Help them to relieve the suffering, if that's the issue, or both, if they're both the issue, and see what eventuates, see what benefit comes from that. So the invitation is to play with that, and I'd be really interested to hear what you discover in that process. Thanks.